because I can never forgive them for what they did to me. Those men follow me everywhere I go. The Hollywood community was shocked and saddened on October 11th when word of Diane Keaton's untimely and lonely death circulated. What really astonished people, though, was the final diary entry the iconic actress made public. In it, she named the 5 men who had a role in her broken heart and ultimately molded her into the woman she is today. These folks will forever remain etched in Keaton's memory. They were the ones who had belittled and ridiculed her directly. For the remainder of her life, Diane Keaton hated which names. Was it a matter of dominance, covert animosity, or treachery? Find out the 5 names that are hidden in this video. 1 was Francis Ford Coppola, who was known to frequently yell at Keaton. Diane Keaton was totally unprepared for the society she entered in 1970. Kay plays the part. Lightning struck her when she saw Adam's Coppola in The Godfather. At once her biggest chance for professional growth and her worst nightmare. Having never read Mario Puzo's novel or held a complete script before the audition, she stated to Fox News that she was horrified when she received the part, full of uncertainty as to why Francis Ford Coppola would trust her. Keaton, who felt most at home in comedy parts, found playing the complex and somber Kay to be an enormous struggle. She stood in front of the mirror in her dressing room and thought, "Why me?" The energy on set was electric. Everything was expertly orchestrated by the remote but brilliant director, Coppola. Keaton, whose brown hair was disheveled and her smile was unsure, could sense the space that separated them. Not a single comforting word was spoken, and not a single shoulder pat was extended. In retrospect, she realized they weren't pals with Polly. "Try this." Coppola's brusque, unsatisfied voice made Keaton feel even more disoriented and vulnerable. "Behind closed doors," she said, "I don't belong here." Keaton's isolation was exacerbated by the frigid New York recording days. There were intense emotional passages involving Al Pacino and James Caan. But her character, Kay, was almost forgotten. She had little screen time because she was Michael Corlea's loyal and kind wife. Keaton felt overlooked, even if she never stated it out loud. Word on the street was that Coppola had envisioned a gangster tale with lots of male characters, cigarette smoke, and bloodshed for The Godfather. Coppola once shook his head in disapproval, his eyes conveying the message, "Just do it my way." She felt growing disappointment with her position and with his preference for the male characters. Keaton frequently revealed that she experienced feelings of loneliness and insecurity while filming The Godfather. Coppola often criticized her, saying her emotions weren't strong enough, and she remembered a scene from Part 1 and 2 where she had to redo a take a number of times. His strict control made Keaton feel trapped. As an actor who thrived on emotional spontaneity and improvisation, despite Keaton's established star power, by the time of The Godfather Part 3, Coppola's approach to the job remained unchanged. Despite Kay's growing confidence and autonomy, behind the scene's sources reveal he was still quite picky about how she depicted her. Coppola allegedly said Keaton's performance was too out there for the film's tone, which devastated Keaton, since it seemed like Coppola didn't believe in her acting abilities. She confessed it was challenging to relate to his vision when she found that he had never told her why he chose her. Tensions in their relationship escalated. Years later, for the first time, Coppola admitted that she was more than just your average wife. He recognized something deeper, funnier, and more intriguing in her. However, Keaton never experienced such trust while on set. To him, she was nothing more than a missing link in his elaborate scheme. She once overheard Coppola and Pacino discussing Michael's significance during a break and didn't hear a word about Kay. She felt her pride slashed at that instant. Keaton didn't hold a grudge toward Coppola. She saw him for what he was, a generous genius with extraordinary vision, and a nice guy. That act of generosity, however, was insufficient to alleviate the sense of being underappreciated. Cooperating with Coppola was like balancing on a tightrope. She told a friend once, never trusting anyone to catch you in the event of a fall. It was nothing new. With The Godfather, Keaton's usual nervousness about beginning a new project. Can I really do this? Was heightened by the demands of working with a demanding director and a script that didn't seem tailor-made for her. Something about a late night on set has been circulating around Hollywood for a while, but it's not well known. Keaton attempted to approach Coppola in the hopes that he would listen to her discussion on Kay's character, who was exhausted after a lengthy shoot. On the other hand, he merely nodded absent-mindedly and strode away, preoccupied with technical matters. In that fleeting instant, Keaton felt completely unnoticed. A performer who isn't physically present, even though she vowed to herself in her heart that she would never let anyone bring her down to her level again. She never brought up the subject again. Keaton came to realize, after some time had passed, that her animosity extended beyond Coppola and into the entire Hollywood establishment, one that frequently neglected women, particularly those above the age of 40. Despite being important to her career, Keaton loathed the part of Kay because it represented quiet sacrifice, which she experienced both on-screen and off. She once said in an interview, "Men get to do the interesting things. Women are the boring ones." With Coppola, she held no personal grudge, but she could never forgive how he perhaps unintentionally reinforced that dynamic in The Godfather. What do you think about Coppola's working style? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Now, let's move on to another name, a man Diane both loved and hated. 2. Warren Beatty, the lover she also hated the most. After The Godfather, Diane Keaton stepped out of K. Corlew's shadow with a fierce desire to prove she was not just a director's muse, when but an artist with her own voice. When Red's 1981 came along, it felt like a tidal wave she couldn't resist. The epic film directed, produced, written, and headlined by Warren Beatty became a universe where art, ideals, and egos collided endlessly. In it, Keaton portrayed Louise Bryant, a journalist and feminist activist, swept up in the storm of revolution and love. The role earned her an Oscar nomination, but behind that shining success were months of tension, exhaustion, and inner conflict between love and self-determination. From the first camera test, Keaton sensed Beatty's magnetic pull. He entered the set like a center of gravity, and everyone seemed to orbit him. Warren always knew what he wanted. She recalled with a hint of bitterness. The problem was he also believed. He knew what everyone else needed. That remark, subtle yet sharp, revealed the duality of admiration and fatigue she endured throughout the shoot. Beatty's working style was a mix of genius and obsession. He could demand retakes 20, even 100 times simply, because Keaton's eyes didn't match the emotional rhythm he envisioned. "Let's do it again," he would say, calm yet absolute. After the 30th take, Diane would stay silent, swallowing her frustration to preserve the moment's authenticity. "I understood his pursuit of perfection," she admitted. "But sometimes that perfection kills the soul of the moment." Once during a long dialogue scene, Beatty suddenly stopped her midline to adjust the position of her hand. Diane paused, looked at him for a few seconds, and softly asked, "Do you want me to be Louise, or just the shadow in your imagination?" The set fell silent. Beatty said nothing, merely signaled to roll again. As the camera started, Keaton felt both defeated and victorious, defeated by his control, but victorious for daring to reclaim her space. Their relationship burned with both passion and cracks. "We loved each other when the camera stopped and argued when they started." Keaton once said that love resembled Red's itself, grand, intense, and exhausting, while Beatty reveled in his role as the leader. Diane began to feel pushed to the sidelines, like a satellite spinning beyond her control. One cold night after a long day's shoot, Keaton approached Beatty. "Do you ever think this film isn't just yours? Isn't it yours, too?" she asked with a hint of seriousness. Beatty grinned, the expression of a man who was sure of himself. "But I have to keep it on course," he added. Diane remained silent. In the shadowy studio, she sensed that their once passionate love was deteriorating into an ego clash. The years between 1978 and 1983 were filled with passion and pain for the couple. Rumor has it that Beatty proposed to Keaton, but she declined, unwilling to give up her independence. Following this, he became increasingly distant and demanding on set. "I think he couldn't stand not being able to control me," she joked half seriously. Regardless of the truth, their relationship left a lasting scar in Keaton's artistic life, a place where love and power blurred beyond recognition. Years later, for Town and Country, they reunited, but the enchantment had faded. Like their love, the film bombed miserably once its first spark died out. Everyone could tell there was tension between them, even if Keaton stayed polite and quiet. No longer was passion present, just respect remained. Later in the interview, she revealed that he had a history of wanting to micromanage everything. Additionally, I discovered that, similar to art, no one has power over another person's emotions. The following year, at the AFI Awards, Beatty embraced her while introducing her as the most fascinating storyline I ever had. This was a long time ago. Her eyes were warm and faraway as she grinned. Not by forgiving one another, but by finding peaceful resolution. Their long-standing miscommunication came to an end in that instant. The truth is that Keaton never hated Beatty. The fact that they could never live in the same reality, with his need for control and her need for freedom, was all she could think about. Even more so than that man, Keaton hated Chevy Chase. 3. The set bully, Chevy Chase. Diane Keaton was already a Hollywood legend by the early 90s, a peculiarly graceful woman in a bright and chaotic environment. I wanted to do something lighter, more joyous, a breath of fresh air, after a streak of somber films, after years of immersing myself in psychologically hard roles. The 1992 release of Memoirs of an Invisible Man was perfectly timed. A sci-fi comedy starring Chevy Chase and directed by John Carpenter. Keaton had high hopes that it would be an exciting excursion, but she was mistaken. Alice Munro, played by Keaton, is a kind and bright woman who falls for a guy who can turn invisible. It was intriguing in writing. Magic, love, laughter, and humanity. Things didn't sit right with Diane from the very beginning of her time on set. Having Chevy Chase as her co-star was more important than the screenplay. Chevy, an American comedy superstar of the 1980s, was known for his improvised comedy, love of jokes, and obsession with being the center of attention at all times. But his renown began to wane in the early 1990s, and his unpredictable conduct became more obvious. Diane, an actress known for her meticulous planning and self-control, was thrust into a terrifying nightmare. In the mornings, he was chronically late, according to one crew member. Every day, Diane would arrive early and settle into a peaceful reading of her screenplay. Chase unexpectedly ruined a pivotal emotional scene one afternoon by sneezing and bursts out laughing, interrupting Alice as she was about to proclaim her love to the man she couldn't see. The set went dark. With her eyes closed, Keaton tried to cling to the glimmer of emotion that had slipped away. In that instant, I felt like she wanted to either cry or run away. It was recalled by a lighting technician. During a subsequent interview, Diane only stated, "There are moments when you realize," implying that not everyone shares her passion for film. That was just the beginning of the friction between them. Because Chase liked to wing it and steal the show, he frequently altered his lines mid-shot, which disrupted Diane's flow. At one point, she spoke softly and said, Chevy, if you're going to change lines, at least give me a little warning so I can follow the scene." In response, he leaned back in his chair and laughed. She responded gently but firmly, "Diane, it's comedy. Just relax. The truest feelings come when you don't plan them." There was an abrupt chill in the room after she said, "I'm not scared of spontaneity. I'm afraid of carelessness." John Carpenter had to stop filming multiple times to calm things down as their scenes together became extremely tense. Keaton was still visibly exhausted, even though she pretended not to be. A crew member revealed that in the makeup room, Chase once joked, "You act great, but if you stay this uptight, no one's ever going to want to kiss you." What might have been a joke to him hit Keaton like a slap. Her private journal from the time was later quoted in an interview, and she wrote a brief line, "Sometimes I feel like I'm acting with a child, one who doesn't realize everyone else is trying to keep the film from falling apart." Without saying a word, she rose to her feet and continued walking away. She was punctual the following day, completed each scene with grace, and said nothing to her co-star beyond what was required by script. After that, everyone on set understood in a quiet way. It was the end of the partnership. Critics were unimpressed, and the picture bombed at the box office upon its release. While critics panned the film and criticized its plot, Keaton remained silent. With a smile on her face, she described the process of making it as a true challenge for Keaton. There was more to Memoirs of an Invisible Man's Failure than meets the eye. A lesson on respect was learned the hard way. Following that, she declined numerous offers due to her perception of a poisonous work atmosphere. "No matter the cost, I do not require success beyond Chevy Chase." There was another name that Keaton vehemently disliked whenever it was brought up. "What I need is to work with people who see filmmaking as a serious journey, not a playground for their egos." McKeel Douglas was that guy. Exactly 4. Joel Schumacher, the difficult filmmaker who left her feeling disoriented. Superhero mania gripped Hollywood in 1995. Joel Schumacher's Batman Forever was supposed to reimagine the Batman mythology, and studios were rushing to make the next huge hit. Diane Keaton, who had already established herself as a cinematic icon of intelligence and elegance by the time production began, took the part more out of curiosity than excitement. She was ready for a change. After years of heavy, emotional tragedies, she wanted to do something vibrant, spectacular, eye-catching, and bursting with the vitality of youth. It was one of the most bewildering adventures of her career. Something she had no idea would happen. It was clear to Keaton on her very first day on set that she had entered a strange planet. Lights from neon signs bathed the Gotham stages, amid the boom of enormous wind machines that sounded like man-made storms. Shimmering metallic garments appeared. Proud, self-assured, and preoccupied with show rather than substance, director Joel Schumacher personified the hedonism of the 90s. Hollywood seen in his mirrored spectacles and white leather jacket. As a minimalist who cherished subtlety and honesty, Keaton felt as though she had fallen into a surreal cinematic dream, where everything was dazzlingly bright. She portrayed the script's intriguing, alluring, and brilliant psychotherapist, Dr. Chase Meridian. The more she read, though, the more she realized that the part was written for comic book heroism, rather than psychological complexity. Everyone might observe, be enchanted by, and desire her character. With a little vulnerability and some philosophical thoughts on the shadow side of human nature, Keaton hoped to give the role more depth. Schumacher, though, was so preoccupied with glitz that it took precedence over everything else. Her character's pauses, in which she ceased speaking to reflect, were deemed unflattering by the director. His wish was that she would be more active, grin more broadly, and appear more alluring. Requirements that ran against to Keaton's natural acting impulses. Schumacher would have her reshoot scenes whenever she tried something new, often for no other reason than that her stare wasn't sufficiently Hollywood. Keaton felt increasingly invisible as they labored. Coppola, Beatty, and Allen were among the directors who had faith in her creative abilities. They had worked with her before. In this case, it was all predetermined. The color of her lipstick, her stance, and the angle of her gaze. The sequence where Chase observes Batman from a distance was filmed by Keaton over the course of a 14-hour day. A straightforward scene that was shot 10 times due to the fact that the light reflections weren't up to Schumacher's standards. Hulking over the roaring fans, he stood in the center of the stage and yelled out, "More, brighter, bigger." Keaton glanced about and noticed the exhausted crew members silently exchanging film reels, their expressions depleted by the blue-purple light. Suddenly, she felt as though she had stepped into a gigantic movie circus. Everything was staged for dramatic effect, and she was merely a prop. Her co-star as Batman, Val Kilmer, didn't help matters. Kilmer maintained an emotional distance, characterizing himself as cold and unapproachable. Kilmer seemed cold and distant in their romantic interactions, as if he were playing the part for effect, rather than emotion. Keaton attempted to infuse warmth into the scenes. She felt much more alone, because there was no chemistry. Speculation abounded that Schumacher neglected his leading lady in favor of fine-tuning Batman's image. Keaton got it. The universe revolved on the dominance of men. It was the center of all else's universe. Out of sheer exasperation, she made numerous trips back to her dressing room. Accepting a project for its glitz instead of its soul was a mistake that other veterans had made, and she wondered if she was making the same error. As she stared into the mirror one night, her face was so covered in makeup that she hardly recognized herself. She realized it wasn't me. This is an altered version of my identity that I created for a different universe. it became progressively more oppressive on sight. Even when Keaton proposed minor changes to the dialogue, Schumacher, who is naturally impulsive, did not try to conceal his annoyance. Members of the crew recounted instances when he made sarcastic comments, such as claiming that Keaton was very serious for an action flick. She listened to them, but said nothing, which just made the hurt worse. The words themselves weren't offensive to her. It was in losing control over her own creative process, which she saw as fundamental to acting. Nonetheless, she completed the part with the cool expertise of a soldier conducting a covert operation. After its premiere, Batman Forever became a huge financial success. However, in Keaton's view, it was a victory of light and not of spirit. She was only seen at the premiere, where she smiled nicely. But her eyes were far away, and she didn't participate in many promotional events. After that, Keaton took a break from noisy commercial ventures and honestly stated, "It wasn't for me." When questioned about the experience, that was all she had to say. Rediscovering herself through writing, drawing, and photography consumed her days. Audiences witnessed a revitalized Diane Keaton, radiant, self-assured, and assured. In her comeback features, such as Something's Gotta Give and The Family Stone, submerging herself in made up worlds was no longer her goal. A person's inner fire of self-respect, not studio lights, is the source of the most radiant light, she had discovered. Number 5. Bringing Keaton pain on set was Michael Douglas, the Icy Coke star. A scathing indictment of marriage, The War of the Roses began filming in 1989. However, for Diane Keaton, it turned into a tangible encounter with wariness, pain, and the collision of two realms. The realms of feeling and authority. Following the phenomenal success of Baby Boom and Reds, Keaton had reached the pinnacle of her career. She was determined to show that she was more than simply the brilliant inspiration for Woody Allen's films. She was also an actress with genuine depth, who could explore the inner workings of multi-layered characters. She was immediately captivated by the script's irony upon receiving The War of the Roses, when civility is supplanted by an innate will to destroy, when love is transformed into hatred, leading to the breakdown of a marriage. The fact that the movie would escalate into a real conflict was completely unknown to her, both in front of and behind the camera. Collaborating with her, Michael Douglas, who exuded an air reminiscent of Wall Street, joined the project. His icy self-assurance and intense determination seemed to thicken the atmosphere wherever he went. Actor Kirk Douglas was the type who thought that primal, destructive force might bring forth reality. The real core of art, according to Keaton, was subtlety and honesty. Despite their professionalism, the tension between them was palpable from the first day due to their divergent perspectives. As if he were getting ready for a mental combat, Douglas would often arrive on set with a tight expression and a wide glare at everyone. Keaton, who is normally quiet and unassuming, felt pressured into participating in a game she had no interest in. Douglas's competitive spirit extended beyond his performance and lines. The constant drive to demonstrate his superiority in strength, intelligence, and performance was evident in his every expression and gesture. On the other hand, Keaton just wanted to be herself on stage, free from any pressure to measure or compare. As filming progressed, the disparity became more apparent. Douglas frequently, sometimes mid-take, suggested alterations to movement or intensity. When director Danny DeVito requested a retake of a heated debate scene involving the flowers, Keaton, who is known for her controlled acting, found that to be somewhat disruptive to her emotional flow and rhythm. Although she made an effort to remain composed, the sight of Douglas's icy, slightly triumphant stare made her feel like an unseen contestant every time the camera paused. One of her most draining memories was the vehicle scenario. It depicts Barbara's wrathful destruction of her husband's prized automobile. Douglas insisted on several takes to ensure the scene was brutally accurate. The emotional toll on Keaton, who gave her all to every performance, became apparent very fast. She was so exhausted by the 8th take that she was gasping for oxygen, her hair matted from perspiration, and her hands shaking from exhaustion. Rather than expressing support, Douglas calmly proposed an alternative approach. He saw it as an act of perfectionism. It felt like cruelty to her. More so than any criticism, Douglas's attitude harmed Keaton. She felt like she was nothing more than a prop for his performance, and that he disregarded her. She had a tiny notepad with her at all times, and during breaks she would sit quietly in the dressing room and write in it. He makes a game out of everything. Winning isn't something I'm keen about. All I want is to play the part to the letter. Not only was I physically drained, but I also felt spiritually stifled. With each passing day, the temperature on set dropped. Keaton stopped talking to Douglas and started concentrating on her work. She never was late, gave her everything in her performances, and departed immediately as her scenes were over. Strictly no small chat, no mingling. Not because she was unsociable, but rather to shield herself from the overwhelming competitiveness on the crew. She earned the nickname Ice Queen from some of her coworkers. When the two protagonists dangle from the enormous chandelier in the last scene, the tension finally broke. It was a risky arrangement that called for flawless synchronization. After Keaton hurt her arm from a rigging problem, Douglas just smiled and replied, "It's fine." He didn't apologize or seem concerned. Keaton knew then and there that the boundary between acting and reality had blurred. The role of Barbara had slipped from her hands. Barbara was a lady who had to deal with the cold shoulder of a man who had been her rock in the past. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief when filming finally wrapped. There was tremendous success with War of the Roses. The film grossed $160 million and received numerous accolades for its terrifyingly realistic acting. The wound was bittersweet for Keaton, though. While she had no qualms about making the picture, she was aware that it had caused her to lose faith in creative teamwork. Neither did Douglas ever express regret or bring up the issue of tension again. At the premiere, they greeted one another with a courteous handshake and Keaton's faint smile. Years later, when asked about the experience in an interview, she simply said, "Sometimes other people's intensity makes you lose your way. I learned not to let it consume me. It was neither blame nor forgiveness, just a gentle way to close a weary chapter." After the War of the Roses, Diane Keaton no longer accepted such brutally confrontational roles. She returned to gentler, warmer stories about independent, confident women who had nothing to prove to anyone. Perhaps that unscripted war in 1989 had taught her the true value of peace, something Hollywood, with all its glitz and noise, rarely offers a woman like her. In the end, Diane Keaton passed away on October 11th, 2025, closing a career that spanned more than half a century, the journey of a woman who never bowed to conformity. When the news broke, Hollywood fell silent for hours. Generations of actors, directors, and writers paid tribute. Nancy Meyers, who had worked with Keaton on Something's Got to Give, wrote, "She was one of a kind, a free soul, strong and gentle at the same time." Keaton's passing came suddenly, but her legacy burned brightly, not only in cinema, but in the way a woman can live fully as herself. Having been born into a family that valued the arts, Diane Keaton spent her childhood in Los Angeles. She began training at a New York City neighborhood playhouse at a young age, fueled by her early enthusiasm for the stage. In the 1970s, she transitioned from Broadway to Hollywood, where she became one of the most iconic figures of her decade. Her roles in The Godfather and Annie Hall catapulted her to stardom, but it was her Oscar that truly sealed the deal. Keaton was always modest, behind the scenes of her popularity, a woman of great intelligence and empathy, who viewed the world with an honest perspective. Diane Keaton opted to be herself in a glamorous Hollywood, never one to shy away from displaying her eccentric side. She adamantly rejected plastic surgery and stereotypical roles. She became an unintentional fashion legend, thanks to her distinctive fedora hat, baggy clothing, and endearingly awkward poise. Still, it was a way of life, not just a fashion statement. You should not be concerned with how other people see your beauty. Truthfulness is all that is required of you. Keaton was more than just an actor throughout the duration of her career. Her many talents included directing, producing, photographing, and telling stories. She was a documentary filmmaker, lifestyle author, and enthusiast of home restoration, what she dubbed the art of silence, as a pastime. The stylish, rustic, and character filled Brentwood home she built with Pinterest was evidence of her creative energy. The house was removed from the market in the days leading up to her death, as if she understood. She wanted to rest in the place she had dedicated her soul to. Individuals were her second big love. The adoption of her two sons, Dexter and Duke, whom she referred to as the greatest achievement of my life, was her one and only marriage. She took it easy in her latter years, capturing moments through photography, writing in her notebook, and caring for her modest Los Angeles garden. Those close to her reported that she continued to make light of herself in her texts. The same charming, funny, and slightly uncomfortable Diane Keaton. Many people felt emptiness after her death. A legend departed Hollywood. On a deeper level, though, the Globe has lost an exceptional voice, one that is free and honest. What made Keaton unique? According to Nancy Meyers, Al Pacino, and a slew of her former co-stars, wasn't her stardom, but rather her ability to make others feel heard and seen. She wasn't merely acting. She was fully immersed in the artistic experience. Diane Keaton had 3 unreleased films that she had intended to be her last films with the public. Her impact was immeasurable even before they were born. Her roles from the women depicted by Adams, Annie Hall, Erica Barry, and Sybil Stone were all multi-faceted, perceptive, and fundamentally human. By doing so, she shared her personal narrative of a woman who had the courage to love, to speak her mind, and to be herself. Maybe it was Diane Keaton's wish for her legacy, not in the role of a Hollywood legend, but of a regular lady who was honest all the way through. Even after the lights have gone out and the cameras have stopped rolling, that mischievous grin and that gravelly, clever voice are still there in every shot. Diane Keaton will always represent authenticity, freedom, and grace in the eyes of movie buffs. Just by being herself, this woman warmed everyone's heart. Diane Keaton once said that the tough parts were what made her stronger, reflecting on her long and tumultuous career. The tumultuous partnerships were what it was. She found self-awareness reflected in the 5 guys who had before unsettled her with their hotness, carelessness, or brutishness. In the midst of Hollywood's colossal egos, every film and conflict served as a lesson in maintaining one's uniqueness. According to her, no one ever truly made me regret anything, only experiences that made me more awake to who I am. Now, as the stage lights go down, Keaton can look back on her life with thanks, smiling. She would not have grown into the powerful, profound, and elegant lady she is now if those hardships had never come her way. Where do you stand? Would you say that Diane Keaton wished she hadn't worked with those people who made her feel uneasy in the past? Or that they contributed to her legend status in their own way? Feel free to share your opinions in the space provided. If you enjoy these kinds of behind-the-scenes Hollywood stories, please like, subscribe, and enable notifications so you never miss an episode.